welcome to the Respectfully podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Scott, and today's guest is joining me from across the pond. Vivienne Mackinder is a legend in the world of hairdressing. With a career spanning over 40 years, she has mastered every aspect of the craft. From commercial to couture, classroom to camera, Vivienne has transformed the art of hairstyling, elevated professional education, and inspired generations of hairstylists across the globe. So welcome, Vivienne, to the Respectfully podcast. I am here in the studio in London. Can you just let our listeners know where you are, please?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Great to be here. And I'm in New York and I'm in the Hamptons.
So we've gone global for this episode. You've had a hairdressing career spanning over 40 years. Is that right?
Yes, I'm wearing well.
A hairdressing legend, some may say.
I've been very well pickled and preserved.
So here in the UK, we know you best for your work with Trevor Sorbie and Sassoons.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm forever grateful because the foundation and the discipline that I got at Sassoons wasn't a foundation that, was so important. And Trevor, he opened the door to the world of creativity for me. And I will always be grateful because Trevor taught me good taste.
Yeah.
Where sometimes in my youth I would just do a crazy hairstyle because I could, and it wasn't always beautiful. Yeah, that was my amazing foundation. And I never realized that as a hairdresser, you could travel the world and do the things that I did. And when I think back to having been around the world so many times and all those
Mm.
experiences, whether it be a show or a photo shoot, I just thought that being a hairdresser, you were trapped behind a chair, and that's not true.
No, it's not true, is it?
No.
How did your first international move happen then?
Actually, I was sent here by Trevor to build an artistic team because he just launched his product line. And I said, well, all right, Trevor, I'll just go for 9 months. And it was so different to British hairdressing and the mindset, the creativity, and I truly struggled. And I went all over the United States and I built a team here. And my plan was always to go back home. It was never ever to
Yeah.
stay here. And then life got in the way.
In what way do they do things differently there as opposed to the UK?
Well, obviously now things have become a lot more global, haven't they? But the
Yeah.
sensibility was much more about it being marketing money driven, as opposed to the people that I was hanging out with in the UK were really inspired and motivated by the art, the craft, and putting hair with fashion as opposed to just generically following a photograph. And the fact that we have street trends in the UK is such
Yeah.
an important foundation to have that self-expression, which doesn't exist here. We don't have that street sensibility. It's much more generic and I would say now a victim of dressing down. And I have this thing now when I go to this big supermarket that's here, I intentionally dress up just to see what kind of laugh and giggle I can get. And I've also been going around photographing the backs of people as they push their carts because there's some scary things I've been seeing, right? So I just do it from the back, when I'm out and photographing the baked beans, and all of a sudden I'm like over here photographing a lady, and to make a point to my work,
Yeah.
saying, what happened to fashion and style, right? What happened to it?
Yeah.
So I go there with my trolley. I have people stop me and say, wow, you look so beautiful. You look so amazing. I go, thank you very much. I'm just making a point here. We can look gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. We dress how we makes us want to feel, don't we?
Yeah, yeah,
So you do a lot of photo shoots and collection work, right?
yeah.
When did you first fall in love with the art of styling hair?
Well, actually, Mark Hayes and I at Sassoons, we used to photograph our work right in the very beginning. And we would take our photographs and get them developed at the chemist. And
Yeah.
then we'd get them back and it'd be black or it'd be overexposed. And we thought we got a bit of a problem here. We need to learn how to take a decent picture. But I think those early days of Mark Hayes and myself playing around was when I started to fall in love with how the camera sees a hairstyle. And then all the way throughout my career, even as soon as I was sent out to do editorial work, and I had zero training, I had no idea. And it's over the years, truthfully, one of the most important tools I've discovered is the camera. And when I'm training hairdressers today, I'm always saying, photograph this, photograph front, side, and back. Is there a hero angle? Does it work all the way around? Because we're not flat surfaces. It should look gorgeous
Mm,
from every single angle. And I think the hardest thing for a human being to understand what we see with two eyes versus a camera with one eye is what
yeah,
happens to depth. Because you lose the depth, you lose the perspective. So many times hairdressers will take a photograph of their client or be on a shoot, and what they're seeing with their naked eye is one thing, but the camera sees it differently. And it's that shift and understanding, well, how the camera is the client now. That's who the
yeah.
client is. And it's seeing it through those lens, which takes training and understanding. But the first thing we lose is depth. So it became a love affair of learning. Um, that so humbling because every time I go into a studio, I'm always thinking, do I have it? And there's always the collective team with their perspectives. And, in the early days, I spent quite a few I spent a lot of time crying in the bathroom because it would be
Oh
like the
no.
photographer would say, "What the hell is that?" And I would go, "Well, it is this. It's bloody awful." And I think, yeah, but it's my masterpiece. I was
Yeah.
working back behind the scenes creating the masterpiece, and now it's on set. It doesn't fit the model's face, it doesn't fit the fashion, it doesn't fit the story, and it's just overdone.
Mm.
And that's one of
How
those.
did you
Sorry, go ahead.
how did you then learn from that?
Well, I'm still learning, to be honest, trying to make peace with the perfectionist quality that I have, which is the lowest measurement that there is, because nothing's ever perfect. So I've had a battle with strong technique, which can suffocate a hairstyle. The artistry, when you go off and you're inspired, but you can't recreate it because intuition and inspiration took you there, not necessarily technique. And then the obsession for it being perfect. And many times my quest to it's got to be perfect, whether it's the client that's going, are you sure? Or whether it's a client on a photo shoot that's saying, what it did was it pushed me to try and be more perfect and more perfect. And what happened was it got worse and worse and worse. And if I'd just relaxed, stepped
Yeah.
back, looked at the big picture, it would have been better. I didn't know when to stop. Do we all relate to
Problem
that,
we
my
all have.
friends? You should have stopped 5 minutes ago. Oh, it looks a lot better a mile away. Yeah, I agree.
So obviously you've got you're teaching education in styling and photo shoots. When did you know that's the career you wanted to pursue?
I think just the rewards, to
Yeah.
when you do get it right, it's so rewarding. And then when you help somebody else, I was very fortunate, right? I have a photograph of me with Christopher Brooker and Trevor Sorby. And
Wow.
it was when we went to Bedell's memorial service. And I'm standing
Yeah.
there with two iconic hairdressers, Christopher Brooker, that created so many of the geometric hairstyles, and Trevor Sorby, who we all know is amazing. And I still
Mm.
speak to him in the positive because for me, he's still alive in my heart, right? But I worked with both of them. I was their assistant, and I grew up with them. I grew up with the iconic Annie Humphreys, so I grew up around incredible, brilliant hairdressers, and I couldn't understand how they would come up with an idea. So I would watch them do the consultation. I would watch them go from nothing to something, and I would think, "What would I do?" I'd be standing there, either a human sectioning clip, sweeping the floor, or I'd be assisting in some capacity or just desperate to learn, how do they see that? And I used to say to Trevor, "How did you come up with that idea?" "Oh, I don't know, it just did." "Well, how did you know it was gonna balance?" "Well, it just does." "Yeah, but how do you know when to stop?" "Well, you just do." And it's like, well, how do you teach that sense of style, that sense of knowing when it's right, when it's wrong, when to do more, when to do less? How do you know that? And then one day I squeezed out of him a bit of information. He said, "Well, Viv, never compromise an oval face shape." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" Because all my time with all these iconic hairdressers, no one ever talked about face shape.
Mm.
Nobody did. And it's like the only person I did a film series called I'm Not Just a Hairdresser, and Vidal was in the first one. So I spent quite a lot of time with Vidal. And I said to him, how did you come up with all these ideas and so on and so forth? He said, well, Vivian, I never ever compromised the face shape and I always cut to bone structure. He was the only person in my entire career that spoke to it. So I then start to unpack, how do you come up with that sense of style? How do you interpret fashion? How do you design to a face shape? And today, how do you design to a body type?
Mm.
Because if somebody is, there's three body types, apple, pear, and banana. So if somebody is an apple, wide in their waist, a pear, wide in their hips, the last thing you want to do is a square line across the back because they're already horizontally challenged. So why would you put a horizontal line, at bra length or shoulder length or above? You're just boxing that person. So now I say to people, did you stand your client up? Did you look at her head to toe? Because you want to make sure you're proportionate, right? You don't want her walking out of the salon and you go, oh, cut that too short. Oh, God, I went too long. Because for the first time, you're looking at the total person. So when I was on photo shoots, one of the things I learned super quickly was I've had somebody caped, sitting down, creating. Now they're standing on set, wearing fashion, and the thing doesn't even balance with their clothes and with the silhouette, nothing works. And it's like, wow, what a shock, right? And so I've learned all of those lessons. So what I've done is I've broken it down and I figured out the
Mm.
science of beauty and the beauty of science. And now I teach it. And that is a very long answer to your question. That is what excites me about doing photo shoots, when I can help someone train their eye, whether it be their
Mm.
phone or whether they be with me on a shoot. I can
Yeah.
help them and guide them. And because that looking through the camera, I say it's exactly the same as really when you're looking through the mirror. And most hairdressers are terrified of looking at their client in the mirror
Mm.
because of what the client's going to be looking back saying through their eyes.
Yeah, yeah. What you say about not knowing when to stop, how do you kind of balance that against being creative?
Well, that's why I like to photojournal. So, for example, we just did a retro boot camp and we were going through the different decades and trying to understand the sensibility. So, for example, we started off with the medieval period, which is actually hippie bohemian by today's standard. But one of the features that they loved in the medieval period was a big forehead. That was considered
Mm.
beautiful. No eyebrows, no eyelashes, big foreheads. I would have been really in fashion. So, what you have to do is, first of all, understand the sensibility, right? The sensibility
Yeah.
of a look, to know how far to go or how much to bring it in. So, fashion to me is a really important part of the equation. So, I have something, I call it my three wheels of fashion, and they are my roadmap to designing to the person, inside their head as well as the physicality of the person. So the first thing I look at is how big or small should this hairstyle be? Should it be whispery and it's soft, or should it be grand and big? Cut, color, styling, right? The next thing I look at is, where does she live in fashion? Is she rock and roll? Is she bohemian? Is she traditional? Where does she live in fashion? And then the third thing I look at, which people don't talk about, is the sensuality. Is she a romantic? Is she androgynous? Is she sexy? Is she sensual? So I have a consultation that I use, which kind of tears this all apart in a very elegant, very, very respectful way, where I
Mm.
discover, well, if I'm going to do rock and roll, do I want to make it glamorous and quiet? If I'm going to do rock and roll, do I want it to be gritty and grungy and androgynous? So that gives me my map. Then I put in face shape because I never want to compromise the beauty of someone's face for a trend and a gimmick. So face shape is critically important. I always then look at body type. So now I've taken care of how they feel about themselves as a woman. I've taken care of their personality. Oh, don't make it too big or make it bigger, right? Taking care of that. Everyone has a lifestyle of fashion sensibility, whether it's I just got out of bed or no, I must be done and dusted type of thing. So I take care of the emotional values as well as the physicality. And when you put them
Yeah.
together, you create, number one, a beautiful image, but for everyday reality in the salon, the hairstyle works for the person head to toe. You can do the most ordinary hairstyle, ordinary, not even the most perfect hairstyle. And if you get what I
Mm.
just said right, you're rocking the house.
Yeah. definitely. Do you fall in love with your own work?
No, no, you very critical, which is a problem because,
Yeah,
you've
can
got
cloud your judgment.
yeah, because sometimes it gets in the way. That's the perfectionist that
Mm,
comes in. Sometimes I try too hard. Like I just created a quiz and I created this quiz because I could see character traits that were getting in people's way, right? And I thought, oh my
yeah,
gosh, I've been all of these. So I created this quiz and it's the first one is being a puppet. So in my career, I was a puppet, whether it be on a photo shoot or with a client. I just wanted to please. So whatever they said, I
yeah,
went, yeah. But inside, I knew I said yes to please, not because it was the right thing to do. So so I was missing opportunities. I felt my confidence failing. And what I was trying to please, but really I wasn't pleasing because I wasn't always doing the right thing for the client. So that was my first
yeah,
problem. My second problem was I could then became an entertainer. I thought if I talk to everybody and entertain them, they'll fall in love with me, the person,
yeah,
forgetting, well, they should really fall in love with the hair because I'm not
yeah.
being hired to entertain. I'm being hired to make them look good, right? So I battled
Mm,
with the entertainer. Then I was obsessed with making it technically perfect, where I would be so into the technique, I forgot about suitability, I forgot about
yeah,
balance, I forgot about that. Then I went the other way and became the artist, like I thought, like I'm throwing all of this away. I'm just going to get into my art because either I got feedback from Trevor Sorby or feedback from somebody. It's like, okay, I better up my game here. It's not innovative. And so then I would go off and create these things which I couldn't even recreate again. So it was like a one-off.
mm,
And I couldn't even remember how I created it. So then I
yeah,
started to realize that the ultimate would be the pedestal, where you have all of these archetypes, but they're in balance. A little bit of the
yeah,
puppet, a little entertaining, a little technical, you balance them. And so I now, when I'm working with people, I can go, you know what, you're so obsessed with the technique, you're on top of your work, just step back. Or I'll say, put down your tools, walk away for a moment. We're about to do a big shoot in New York in a couple of weeks. And I know I'm going to be saying it, put down your tools, go and get a cup of coffee, come back
yeah,
and you'll see it with fresh eyes because you're overworking it because you want it so bad. The very thing you want, you're pushing further away. So
mm,
I'm loving them, I'm coaching them, I'm supporting them, I'm guiding them. But what am I doing really? I'm training their eye. And I'm also
yeah,
having to make peace with the psychology of what hairdressing is about. So I sometimes get
yeah,
somebody that will say to me, "Oh, well, Viv, I love to talk to my clients. I want to know all about them and blah, 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 blah." They're one of these chatty, chatty, chatty.
yeah,
And then if their friend is with them, they say, yeah, she never shuts up. And
mm,
then I say, well, can you have two conversations at the same time? And they'll go, no. Well, you've got to talk to the hair. The hair is telling you something. You cut it, it shrinks. You cut it, it flips. You cut it, it whatever. It's talking to you. So if you're so busy talking about this person's holiday or her fourth boyfriend or whatever, which is juicy information, you've now got into automatic pilot. You're not really connected to the hair. You're in the habit. It's like driving down the car and you don't think about moving from gear one to gear two to gear three. It's automatic. And you can only have one
mm,
conscious thought at a time. So I have to say
yeah.
to the entertainer, I'm going to challenge you to say to the client, I'll be quiet for a little bit because I'm going to razor around your face. So I'm just going to talk to the hair.
Do you know what? That's really interesting and such a valid point. I wonder how many hairdressers are going to listen to this and think, "Oh yeah, actually, maybe I should hold fire on that holiday, that boyfriend." And it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, it gets exhausting too. I mean, at the end of the
Yeah,
day, you've used up all your words and you're exhausted. So we actually have the quiz. People can take it. It's really quite funny. So I did my own quiz and I was shocked because I had the pedestal, but I had a lot of technical because I've been teaching people technically. And I thought, screw this. I'm going to just break free. I want it to be raw. I want it to not be perfect. I'm just going to be rebellious because this technician is suffocating me. So
mm,
I've made my own shift because, life's a balance, right? It's a balance behind your chair. And
yeah,
if you're not true to your own self and you haven't developed your own brand and your own signature look, then you're doing what somebody else is. And the comparison game is a game of destruction. And social
Mm.
media probably is the worst thing right now for that. We look at what somebody else is doing, we compare them to self. We're not even doing a
Yeah.
good comparison because, it's so highly edited. And then we say, "Oh, look, mine sucks." And it's like, "No, it doesn't. You've got to find
Mm.
your voice. They have theirs. Now you
Yeah.
find yours."
Yeah. I know. I think social media has its pros and cons, and it's trying to navigate that is still a bit of a problem,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is.
When you're teaching your students to work with the camera, are there common blind spots?
Yes, because I don't step back.
Yeah.
I think I think one of the most amazing things I learned from Trevor was he never compromised beauty, and you'd see him stop and step back, and he'd turn his head sideways, and he'd look, and they'd be quiet because he was thinking. Angela, I've seen him do the same. Antoinette Benders,
Mm.
I've seen her do the same. Some of the most beautiful hairdressers. I've seen them just have that quiet moment to stop and look. So I'd say that's the number one thing. The other thing is that they don't understand how the camera is seeing the shot. So I will say to them, even if you put your pretend that this is the camera, close this eye, now look, because now you're looking one eye like the camera. So before you even
Yeah.
go on set, just look at it that way. Or just take a photograph with your phone and make the adjustments right now because the phone is really a great teacher.
Mm. Is it difficult to teach that editorial eye?
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time.
Mm.
And, what is good taste? I always think good taste completes the look, it doesn't compete with the look. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. And just that sense of knowing when to stop. And,
Yeah.
or do more. There are times when you should do more. I'm about to do Fashion Week here in New York, and I can't say
Mm.
what we're doing because, for confidential
Yeah.
reasons, but I'm gonna be working for 3 days prepping for this show, and the
Wow.
hair is gonna be unbelievable. I mean, I'm just so excited about it, and I've actually had some nightmares thinking, "Can I do it?" Because it's gonna be quite challenging. And I'm going to have to do all of what I'm saying right now. And so what I'm going to be doing a lot of is
Mm.
cutting, photographing, stepping away so I don't overcut.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that I would say is the most important thing. But again, you see, if you know, so when I'm working with these kids, right, if I know that one of them's a technician, I'm going to have to speak to them through the voice of a technician and just say, you know what, technically you're doing really well right now, but back off. Let's look at it as a bigger shape. If I'm talking to them as and they're trying to entertain the model because they're an
Mm.
entertainer, I'll just say you don't
Yeah.
need to entertain her. Let her be on her phone. And you just focus with the hair and breathe. Just relax because you're now
Yeah.
taking your behavior behind your chair in the salon and you're bringing it into a studio, and it doesn't work. You
Mm.
don't need to make best friends with this model. You're never going to see her again. You're
Yeah.
professional, you care for her, but this is about the project. And the other thing too is, and I think this has been, years of me not taking things personally when either the makeup artist, the photographer, the fashion stylist, or a brand manager, or whoever the person is on the shoot says that's not working. You can feel this incredible like stab in your stomach, incredible stab in your stomach, thinking, "Oh my God, I failed." I immediately go to, what's your vision? Tell me so I can fix that. Like, what's your vision? What's your vision? Because if I get hung up on the critique, I'm stuck. And I need
Yeah.
to learn what the problem is and say, what do I need to do to make this work for you? And
Mm.
it's taken a long time to get there, which is why I used to go into the bathroom and cry.
Oh.
Oh, I'm no good. I'm no good. I think I'll have a pity party.
Well, look at you now. You touched on Fashion Week there. How do you select the team that you're working with, the hair team?
Well, I'm flying in two people who I've trained, who are very, very technical. And
Mm.
because the hair that we're doing is really difficult. So I brought those two in. The rest I actually put
Yeah.
out on social media, and I said, "Would you like to come
Oh,
backstage?" And what I did was I then looked at everyone's Instagram. So if I saw an
yeah.
Instagram sensibility that was in alignment with what this show is, I thought, "Yeah, this person, I can tell they would be able to manage it because I need to know how they can handle hair." Um,
Mm,
and when I saw Instagram pages that to me just looked like a color swatch chart where it was just backs of
yeah.
heads and it was just ombre, balayage, back of head, back of head, back of head. It was like, I don't even know if this person can actually do this type of work. Um,
Yeah.
and their color work was lovely. So they did I didn't take
Definitely style. Yeah.
no.
Well, there's one of the pros of social media anyway.
Yeah,
Using it for a good thing there.
yeah, yeah. But it is important, if you wanna do things outside of the salon, like a photo shoot, or if you wanna, like, become a bridal specialist or whatever it may be that's not your everyday reality, you've gotta really invest that time and make that your focus, because I've said this so many times. I'll give you a real quick story, if I may. I was
Yeah.
teaching this hairdresser who's a salon owner. He was, in Michigan, State, and he had never used a half round brush, like a Denman brush before. So everything he did was round brushes. And I said, "Well, they're
Mm.
lovely, but they will give you much more of a bubble unless you're kind of dragging and la, la, la." I said, "So I want you to use a half round brush." He said, "I would never use this on my clients. I don't have those type of clients." And I said, "When you master it, she will show up." So I said, "For your geometrics, your bobs, and so on, you just don't want a big old bubble. She's going to look like a cobra, right? So you want it, skinnier." And I said, "That's the beauty of this brush." So off he goes. He practices and he practices, and I get a phone call. He said, "You said to me when I master the brush and I master this technique, she will show up." I went, "Yeah." He said, "She did, but you didn't tell me it would be Anna Wintour, the editor in chief of American Vogue."
No way.
And,
Oh,
and what
she showed up.
showed up. Yeah, and I've seen this happen so many times. I say to people, "Master
Wow.
it and she will show up." So she sat in his chair and she said, "No products, no flat iron, a Denman brush." She called it by what it was. And for those of you who may not know Anna Wintour, the Devil Wears Prada movie was based on her personality.
Mm,
She's a brilliant woman, but she's worn a bob forever and a day.
yeah.
And clearly, she knows exactly what she wants. People have put product in and she didn't like the feel. They flat ironed it. That's not the same effect, right? And so
Mm,
that was it. So anyway, I've seen that many a time, and I've seen people where we've been working on. So say, for example, if someone's really technical, I'll say, "Let's do a real boho look. Let's undo her. Let's go there." To say, "Oh, it's not perfect." No, it's not meant to be.
when you are putting together a photo shoot, how do you build your visual narrative with like the photographer, the makeup, the fashion, the pose? How do you put that all together?
Well, at this point in my career, I've got a lot of amazing people within my network. But say you're going to start fresh, the first thing to do is find your photographer, because if you found your photographer, you found his network. You know,
Mm,
when you're in any business, look to who's doing it really, really well, get their advice so you can shortcut the journey, right? Because you don't have time to waste on photographers that don't work. Well, this photographer does bridal, but you want to do high fashion. There's a mismatch. So I always start off with my photographer. And,
yeah.
you look at credits, you look at, work that you appreciate, that you value, and you reach out to them. So there was a photographer that I loved, Julia Pogodina, incredible photographer, and I was looking at her work in, consumer magazines and,
Mm,
just beautiful collections, and I thought, "I'm gonna reach out to her." And then the voice came in saying, "She won't wanna work with you." And then the other voice came in saying, "Well, just call her." Then the voice came in, "Well, she's gonna say no." And then the voice said, "Well, if she says no, then it's no." So I called her and I said, "I would
mm,
love to work with you. I love your work." And I was prepared for the no. And she said, "Well, I'd love to." So she checked me out and I went, "Great." So then I got into her network, and
yeah.
wow, her network was a whole nother world. So it's looking at credits. It's following people on social that you really like, great makeup artists, because sometimes through that door, a makeup artist is always working with a photographer, maybe through that door. Um, I would put the modeling agency as the last thing, because when you go and work with a modeling agency, the moment they hear hair, they're terrified. And if they don't know who you
Yeah.
are and they haven't seen what your work, they're not going to want to send their girls to you. But when you say, I'm
Mm.
doing the shoot with Joseph Cartwright and we're looking for this sensibility, and you use the language that the agencies understand, so you don't sound
Yeah.
like a novice, that makes it different. But for example, this shoot that we're doing, Joseph Cartwright has a relationship with some really strong agencies in New York. He's working with them all the time. So I'm leveraging his expertise and his relationships. So I always look, who can I leverage? I always say, who's doing it the best? And how do I
Mm.
earn my right to be there?
I imagine it's quite difficult to how you vision something in your head to put that across to your team, using that as an example. Where you've got the idea in your head, explaining that to someone and how they interpret it
Yeah.
must be quite difficult.
Yeah, but sometimes it's better, you know?
Yeah,
I remember we put wigs on upside down. Trevor used to love putting wigs on upside down. In fact, I did a page boy wig for Vidal. He was going on tour, and I did the page boy. I cut it. And it was such an expensive wig, and I was terrified, and it just kept going shorter and shorter. And I thought, this page boy is going to end up being a halo if I'm not careful. Anyway, did the haircut. But what I learned was that that particular wig, when it was flipped the other way around, flipped upside down, it turned into a graduated bob. And long before I was at Sassoon's, apparently
yeah.
at a fashion show with Vidal, they put on a wig backwards, and Vidal saw the graduated bob because her hair was upside down.
Oh,
And that's when
yeah.
he got the idea for the graduated bob.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Cool, right?
Every day's a school day. So, my last question for you today, what piece of advice would you give to a hairdresser looking to branch out into photo shoots?
Start with your phone. Start photographing your work. And I have to say to you, I am a huge friend of the mannequin. Never worked on mannequins when I lived in England, but here they become my bestie because I'm just looking at shapes, silhouettes, right? And so I
Yeah.
can do something on a mannequin, photograph it, flip the parting, photograph it, make it sleek, photograph it, make it undone, photograph it. Then I can scroll back and I can look at where did it work, where did it not work, and
Well,
why.
thank you. Just before we go, if you could share how we can find out about your education, please.
Yeah, so one place I'd love to send you to is called vivmagic.com, and you can take the quiz, the archetype, and find out where you are, right?
Yeah,
So you can do that. And my website is viviennemackinder.com.
lovely. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been fun being with you.
And you.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you to Vivienne Mackinder for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation just as much as I did. Please rate and review the podcast to help us climb the chart. And whilst you're here, why not check out our spin-off series, Disrespectfully. Until next time, bye.